Hey there, good morning everyone. I'm Errol Barnett in for Vladimir Duthier. Right now, we're gathering all the big news stories across the U.S. and around the world. President Trump is paying a visit to Capitol Hill, persuading a divided GOP to back his budget bill. What we know about his meetings with Republican lawmakers this morning. Plus, we'll hear from the authors behind the explosive new book about the Biden White House and the shocking allegations about an effort to cover up details about the former president's health. Also, powerful storms tore through the central part of the U.S., but as thousands are recovering from a string of deadly tornadoes right now, more storms are on the way. You're in the right place. This is CBS News 24/7. All right, we begin this hour on Capitol Hill. You've got President Trump meeting with GOP leaders personally to try and rally them behind what he calls, and you've heard this a million times by now, his big, beautiful budget bill. The president has criticized what he's calling grandstanders, though, who are raising concerns about the package. After arriving on Capitol Hill this morning, the president remained confident that Republicans will ultimately unite behind it.
I think we're a very unified party. The Senate's doing great. John Thune is doing fantastically. He's a great guy. And we're going to have a bill, the one big, beautiful bill. I think it's the biggest bill ever passed, and we got to get it done.
CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small is covering this for us and joins us now. Torian, great to see you. So what is happening at this moment, and who exactly does the president need to convince to get on board?
Yeah, Errol, so we know actually from a congressman, 1st Congressional District in Florida, Jim Petronas, that the president entered that conference to a standing ovation from lawmakers there. What we're expecting to happen is essentially the carrot and the stick. And the carrot this is Donald Trump's pitch. He's the person who coveted the art of the deal, but pitched to his fellow Republicans that this would be a way of fulfilling a major campaign promise. Part of the reason why Donald Trump won is because of these lists of legislative priorities that are pretty much outlined and insulated in this massive reconciliation bill. He's looking to get their support behind that to say, hey, if we can get this done, we could prove to voters that we do in fact keep our promises that we've made to them. The stick could be, and based on what we've seen him post to Truth Social just last week, is a threat to primary them. He said in that post right ahead of the House Budget Committee last week that he doesn't want any grandstanders getting in the way of this bill's success. Ultimately, what we saw happen then during a Friday vote is that 4 Republicans voted no, and one of them being Chip Roy of Texas, because he said the spending cuts didn't go deep enough. After conversations over the weekend, they were able to see eye to eye, and Roy and the other 3 congressmen ultimately voted present instead of no or yes. The reason probably why they didn't vote yes is because they still want to see those changes, and according to leadership and those same members, it appears that those changes could be incoming, Errol.
Really interesting, and we know that no Republican wants to get primaried. That was a tactic of Donald Trump during his first term. If it does, in fact, get through this stage in the House, what's the likelihood that it will pass the Senate as is?
Well, we'll see. I mean, there are still quite a few Republicans in the Senate who also share some concerns from these hardline Republicans in the House. There's Rand Paul, who's uncertain about whether or not these spending cuts go deep enough. There's Josh Hawley of Missouri, who's extremely uneasy about any cuts to safety net programs. And as we know, as this bill stands, there's quite a few cuts coming to Medicaid programs and food stamps, including work requirements tacked on that Republicans want to see get pushed sooner. As this proposal stands, that won't kick in until 2029. We're hearing now from people involved in negotiations that that could move up as early as late 2026, Errol.
All right, so it sounds like they're still editing around the edges. Torian Small with the latest for us. Torian, thank you very much. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us now from the White House with more on this. Natalie, what's interesting is that as President Trump entered this meeting, he expressed confidence. He says, we're on the right track. We'll get this done. But then why did he feel the need to go to Capitol Hill if he was confident that Republicans were already behind his bill?
Hi, Errol. Well, in his words, he said this morning he is the cheerleader for the Republican Party. And we know on close votes, he's had to personally lobby some of these Republican members or holdouts, make phone calls, or as we're seeing today, go over there physically and talk to the GOP House conference behind closed doors. And to kind of further that point that you and Torian were talking about in terms of messaging to House members or kind of threatening them with re-election prospects if this bill does not pass. The White House is framing this as a potential tax increase on Americans if it fails to move forward. Here's more of what he had to say.
So this is the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, or you'll get a 68% tax increase. And if that happens, I mean, what Republican could vote for that to happen? Because they wouldn't be a Republican much longer. They would be knocked out so fast.
So again, tying this to future elections. But as we know, there is a delicate dance that has to be done here between bringing conservatives and moderates together. Some of these sticking points that you guys were talking about regarding Medicaid and also spending cuts not going far enough, according to budget hawks. Then there's the issue of the moderates who want increased tax deductions in states that pay higher taxes, the SALT issue. So there's a lot of big issues that still have to be worked out in this more than 1,000-page legislation, and the president hoping that he can seal the deal, at least when it comes to the House.
And Natalie, despite some of the resistance that we've been speaking about, how would this bill, if passed, really cement the president's legislative goals, even more so than his hundreds of executive orders up until now? I mean, this would be a major win for his presidency.
Yeah, any major piece of legislation is, because as we know, executive orders can be subject to various legal challenges. If this bill moves forward, that cements his 2017 tax cut from his first term. So that's a key win. Also, campaign promises such as no tax on tips. And even more importantly, it helps advance some of his goals when it comes to border security and also defense priorities, because that is in this spending bill as well. So if he wants to carry out some of his goals when it comes to deportation and border security, he needs the funding and resources to do that. That, of course, comes from Congress, Errol.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line here for the American people and for President Trump. Natalie at the White House. Thanks, Natalie. And a quick note, we will have more from Capitol Hill. You got a live picture of the Capitol Dome here for you as soon as the president finishes his meetings, and we'll bring you that content as soon as possible. Now, just days after former President Biden announced that he has an aggressive form of prostate cancer, a new book is coming out with allegations that his aides hid his declining health from the public. Original Sin by journalists Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson delves into first-hand accounts, many of them anonymous, from Biden's time in office. Tapper and Thompson discussed their findings earlier on CBS Mornings.
The Biden that we saw on the debate stage last June, he had other moments like that behind the scenes, and increasingly so. And they started structuring his schedule, his public schedule, to make sure that the public didn't see it. And even some people inside their own administration, their own White House, their own cabinet did not see this.
CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now from Wilmington, Delaware. Aaron, good morning to you. Any reaction from the Biden camp at this point about what is really being described as an explosive book?
Errol, good morning. I'm about a mile away from the former president's house in Wilmington, where a source has told CBS News is where he is staying, as he and his family considers treatment on his cancer diagnosis. But we did just get this response on the book from Biden's spokesperson, where they say, quote, "There is nothing in this book that shows Joe Biden failed to do his job, nor did the authors approve the allegation that there was a cover-up or conspiracy." The spokesperson goes on to say that there was no examples where national security was threatened or where President Biden wasn't, quote, engaged in the important matters of the presidency. You also saw a reaction from Naomi Biden, the daughter of Hunter Biden and granddaughter of the former president, where she called the book, quote, political fairy smut, and really discredited the claims in it. And this book, from a quick skim earlier this morning, really mainly details examples, accountants from Democratic officials, members of Congress, where they had seen President Biden's mental acuity in decline, yet remained silent.
And what was interesting, Aaron, is this morning, as Jake Tapper was looking at that statement from former President Biden's spokesperson, Tapper insists that this book does actually expose a cover-up, and all of the information he was able to gather was post-election in between November and now. But of course, this was before this public announcement of the former president's cancer diagnosis. Do we know what types of treatment are even being considered?
Yeah, at this moment, we have nothing official from the Biden camp. We do know that chemotherapy is an option for this kind of treatment, a type of hormone medication that lowers the former president's testosterone levels to help kind of stunt the cancer growing. But we also know that President Biden, from his time as vice president and during his time in the White House, has really heralded more federal funding for clinical trials. That's been something that's part of his, quote, cancer moonshot initiative, and potentially, that we're waiting to hear from his camp, could be something that they could look into.
All right, Aaron Navarro with the latest for us, joining us from a windy Wilmington, Delaware. Aaron, thanks. Another day of destruction in the central U.S., and this includes Oklahoma. Take a look at this. You can just see some of the damage. This was from a tornado, and it was just one of many twisters that's been part of a deadly week of extreme weather. CBS News senior weather correspondent Rob Marciano is now in Blanco, Oklahoma, tracking new storms on the way.
The second day of this huge system slamming the central U.S. brought over 450 damaging storm reports. We're in Pittsburgh County, which got hit with a tornado. This is the town of Blanco that the eastern edge got hit with a tornado. You can see what it did to this piece of property. A lot of trees down. There's a tree in that home. There's a tree that's blocking the access road to this subdivision. There are power lines that are down all over the place, and they've done a fairly good job of clearing some of the roads, but a lot of the roads, as we've driven around this morning, have been impassable and very dangerous to drive around, and a lot of power out throughout this area. National Weather Service will come out and survey the damage here and see just how big a tornado it was, how strong it was, and for how long it was on the ground. 6 reported so far yesterday, and today's going to be day 3 as this system pushes to the east. So places like Memphis, Tennessee, Tupelo, Mississippi, Huntsville, Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, Knoxville, even Atlanta, Georgia, and unfortunately for much of the state of Kentucky, they're going to see more in the way of damaging storms as they recover from the tornadoes that hit them very hard on Friday. Back to you.
All right, Rob, that. Still to come for you here on CBS News 24/7. The manhunt, it intensifies for several escaped inmates in New Orleans. What we know about how 4 of the 10 were captured. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. We've got some breaking news just into our newsroom for you. A maintenance worker has just been arrested and accused of helping 10 prison inmates escape from a New Orleans jail. Now, the suspect was arrested last night, according to the Louisiana Attorney General's office. And the search is still on to find 6 inmates on the run after a 4th inmate was recaptured yesterday. CBS News reporter Katie Weiss brings us more on this story.
4 days after a brazen jailbreak in New Orleans, Louisiana State Police posted this photo on social media, announcing the arrest of Gary C. Price, bringing the total to 4 apprehensions so far. 6 remain on the run, and police are relying on technology that may already be helping. New surveillance video with facial recognition shows 2 inmates, including Kendall Miles, walking down tourist Central Bourbon Street hours after breaking free. Miles was arrested roughly an hour later. He was found hiding under a car. But sources tell CBS News there was a delayed response after changes were made last month to the camera's alert system, changes the city allegedly requested over misidentification concerns.
We need those cameras.
Attorney General Liz Murrell supports the cameras, managed between state police and a nonprofit called Project NOLA.
Those cameras are enormously beneficial tools, and I think you can see in the reality of that having played out in this situation.
But the ACLU claims the cameras lack oversight and raise civil rights concerns.
Witnesses are under threat right now. I think we do everything that we can to bring these people back in.
Murrell is leading the investigation into who may have helped the 10 inmates escape.
One of the questions that I think is on a lot of people's minds is just where were the guards?
So that's all part of our investigation. Nobody wanted this to happen. But if it can take us to a better place and a more secure facility, I think that's good.
Wow. All right, Katie Weiss reporting there. Later today, a city council meeting is expected to discuss if the jail's budget problems led to breakdowns in security. And all State Department of Corrections inmates have been transferred out of that prison to serve their time elsewhere. All right, now to this story. The FAA is investigating a fourth system outage in less than a month at the air traffic control center that handles flights at Newark Liberty International Airport. Now, authorities say the control center lost radio communications for just 2 seconds, but a source is telling CBS News it actually took 1 minute to fully recover communications.
Just be advised, we may be having a frequency outage. United 2295.
Go ahead, 2295.
It may be a while. They lost the radar and frequencies again.
CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve is here with us in Studio 55 with more on this. Chris, great to see you.
Good to be here.
Welcome back to the mothership. But tell us about this latest outage, because we're talking about the difference between seconds and minutes. But what in reality does that mean for folks who are flying?
Well, I think for folks that were flying, they probably didn't notice much of anything. You may have sat on the lineup to take off a little bit longer than you otherwise would have. What appears to be happening here is the communications line going into this facility, they're old. And we've heard a lot about how this aging system and copper wires to handle the telecommunications traffic, whereas like this building, you would use fiber optics. So it pulls data from a spot in Long Island and I believe from the Newark Tower. It's been getting some hits. And what happened with the first 2 outages, the backup system didn't come up like they thought it would. So there's about a 60-second reboot to the primary, which is why we see these outages are 1 minute, 90 seconds. The backup system, DOT says now is working properly, but you can see why there's some extra precaution being added that the controller saw it go down twice. So do you want to trust it? Or do you trust but verify and slow everything down, which I think is what you're seeing play out here.
And I think it was a few weeks ago where you were sharing that the technology is so outdated in some instances that they're using floppy disks. There are folks alive who don't even know what that is. But you also have this layer of a staffing shortage, which is exacerbated by those air traffic controllers who took the 45 days off for trauma leave. How does that add to the complicated puzzle of staffing these places?
Well, it's hard because the air traffic control staffing shortage goes back years, right. And it's not one you can quickly fix. It takes time to train the air traffic controllers, and then you don't start them in the New York airspace. It's the most complicated airspace in the world. You start somewhere else and you work your way up. So there is a lag to closing this staffing issue across the country, but particularly here, where even seasoned controllers still go through about a year of training before they can step in. Part of the decision to move control from Newark to Philadelphia was to improve staffing. It's more affordable to live in the Philadelphia area than it is in Long Island, and that was part of why they thought they were having trouble staffing the New York City airspace, which has been chronically and critically understaffed for years. But it takes time to build that pipeline. It takes time to train. And then if you take about a half dozen controllers out of the mix, it does create additional staffing pressures, which result in less traffic being able to be handled. So fewer flights come in and out of Newark.
Yeah, we've only got a couple seconds left. You were emphatic the other week about it still being safe to fly into Newark. Now that there's been a 4th incident, how safe is it to fly in?
I flew into Newark on Sunday.
And you'll fly out?
And I will fly out. We'll see, because I don't know when I'm leaving.
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, if Chris Van Cleve is flying out of Newark, it's fine for you. Chris, great to see you. Thanks so much. All right, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of playing for time this morning in order to continue its war in his country. These comments come after President Trump said Ukraine and Russia would start negotiations immediately towards securing a ceasefire, and that followed separate calls with Zelensky and Putin. CBS News reporter Olivia Gazas is back in the mix here at CBS News and joins us now. Olivia, great to see you. A warm welcome back to the airwaves here. What should we make of the Monday calls now that we've heard from President Trump, we've heard from Zelensky, and I'm wondering if there's anything new out of the Kremlin?
Thank you so much, Errol. It is great to be back. Great to be with you. You are right that President Trump made it seem like these peace talks could get off the ground immediately, was his word. But the picture, as it turns out, was a lot more mixed coming from the Kremlin. President Putin used sort of a Russian word salad to say that we could work on a memorandum for a possible future peace accord. Needless to say, direct talks are not underway at the moment, and it's not clear when or where they could start. Both leaders did say that the tone of the conversation, the spirit of the conversation, which we know lasted more than 2 hours with translation, was positive, was constructive. But that's precisely why Ukrainian President Zelensky is saying this is Vladimir Putin stalling for time. This is his effort to wriggle out of the sanctions that the Europeans and the U.S. have been threatening now for weeks. The U.K. actually just moments ago issued a whole new swath of sanctions on Russia, which is an indication that they're prepared to move forward to cajole them with sticks to the negotiating table. President Trump yesterday indicated that he was still more inclined to use carrots, dangling these prospects of major business deals with Russia rather than getting them to the table with a new swath of sanctions from the U.S. side.
And we know that speaking after those calls yesterday, President Trump expressed optimism about the possibility of securing a ceasefire, but he also left the door open to things falling apart. Let's just quickly show that for our viewers.
I think something's going to happen. It's a got very big egos involved, I tell you. Big egos involved. But I think something's going to happen. And if it doesn't, I'd just back away and they're going to have to keep going.
And we heard something similar from Vice President J.D. Vance, that if the two sides couldn't agree to something, the U.S. was out. Is the Trump administration truly willing to walk away? And if so, what would that mean?
It's definitely what they're saying. As you pointed out, the president has said it, the vice president has said it, the secretary of state has said it, all of them indicating that the U.S. wants to push forward on a deal that ends the bloodshed, ends the hundreds of soldiers who are losing their lives on the battlefield every day, but are not willing to dispatch senior U.S. officials around the world for talks that wind up being inconclusive or unproductive. And so they have said the U.S. could well walk away. The risk of doing that, though, is that it disincentivizes effectively the Russians from coming to the table at all. Because if their calculus is why, if Ukraine's major military backer in the form of the U.S. loses interests and walks away in 3 months or 6 months, doesn't that strengthen our negotiating leverage at the table? So this tactic of stalling for time appears to be the one that is the savviest at the moment, and which is why Ukrainian President Zelensky is so strenuous about getting to the table with no conditions now.
Yeah, and with nothing happening, that means that the war continues and so many innocent Ukrainians are caught in the middle. Olivia, great to see you. We appreciate the update from the State Department.
Thank you, Errol.
All right, now to this. Residents in the South and Midwest are turning to FEMA in the wake of deadly and severe storms. But after major cuts, what will those recovery efforts really look like? We'll discuss that next. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. Here's a quick look at the top stories we're following for you right now. The final parole hearings for the Menendez brothers has been pushed back. Eric and Lyle Menendez won their bid for resentencing last week. They were set to go before the parole board on June 13th, but that's now been rescheduled for late August. This is to give all participants more time to prepare. The brothers have spent more than 30 years behind bars for the murders of their parents back in 1989. The NTSB says it is still waiting for permission from Mexican authorities to get on board its Navy ship that crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge over the weekend. Surely you saw that footage. Investigators say the entire incident happened within 5 minutes between when the ship backed out of its docking spot at a Manhattan pier to when it hit the bridge. 2 crew members were killed and 19 others injured. The NTSB will be looking into whether there was mechanical or engine failure. And the Trump administration has agreed to pay nearly $5 million to the family of Ashley Babbitt to settle a wrongful death lawsuit. Babbitt, as you may remember, was fatally shot by police when she breached the Capitol during the January 6 riots. She was reportedly attempting to climb through a window leading to the Speaker's lobby. In the civil lawsuit, Babbitt's estate accuses the officer of negligence and failing to de-escalate. The outgoing U.S. Capitol Police Chief says he's disappointed the Justice Department settled. All right, U.S. Attorney Alina Habba has announced charges against New Jersey Congresswoman LaMonica McIver and accuses her of assaulting a federal agent. The Justice Department says the altercation happened at the facility where Newark, New Jersey Mayor Ras Baraka was detained on trespassing charges. Now, those charges against Baraka have since been dropped. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen is following this story for us and can help us understand what's really going on. Jake, great to see you. How much space is there between what the DOJ says happened and how McIver is characterizing the incident?
Well, Errol, we just got an 8-page federal charging document that just hit the federal docket in New Jersey. The Department of Justice says that McIver, in an attempt to kind of create a human shield around Mayor Baraka, who you just pointed out, the trespassing charges against him were dropped last night by Habba. And in the same announcement, she said that Congresswoman McIver elbowed and assaulted a federal law enforcement officer. In this indictment and the charges filed, they accuse her of slamming her forearm into the body of the officer, forcibly grabbing him, and then pushing a separate ICE officer, all in the kind of the scrum you can see playing out on the screen right now. McIver says that the charges are purely political and mischaracterize her actions, and that she looks forward to the truth being laid out clearly in front of court. There will be an appearance that she'll be forced to make, including a mugshot and fingerprinting sometime soon, now that the charges have officially been filed.
Now, we are watching a literal power struggle between local authorities and federal officials when it comes to oversight and conditions at this ICE facility. Why, we talked about the charges that remain for one of the two individuals, but why is the DOJ dropping charges against the mayor?
Well, U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, who we should remind our viewers of, is not necessarily apolitical. She's a longtime ally of President Trump, stood next to him in court in multiple different cases, represented him in court. She said in a letter that was sent out on social media last night that in the spirit of public interest, she did invite Mayor Baraka to tour Delaney Hall with her, and that after extensive consideration and in the sake of moving forward, Errol, they want to move forward on this. Earlier last week, the Department of Justice actually wanted to go straight to trial. Habba wrote a letter to the judge saying that they intended to fully pursue the 30-day maximum penalty in prison for Mayor Baraka's trespassing charge, although obviously it was a misdemeanor, and very likely that with proper legal representation, Baraka would probably get little more than kind of a slap on the wrist or a warning for doing that, as his story was, again, completely opposite, that he was actually invited into the detention center and then arrested.
Just an incredible story. I want to pivot to a different topic with you now. The Department of Justice sent a letter to Chicago's mayor, Brandon Johnson, to inform him that they're opening an investigation into the city's hiring practices. What's happening there?
Well, that's right. Mayor Johnson's office got a letter from the Department of Justice yesterday saying that after the mayor made some comments at a church and spoke about the city's hiring practices, including, I'll just read some quotes that they single out, infrastructure, the head of infrastructure in the city is a black woman. The Department of Planning is a black woman. Business and economic neighborhood development, the deputy mayor is a black woman. All of these kind of excerpts that they pull say shows racial discrimination in the hiring practices in the city of Chicago, and that there is an investigation into whether the mayor has violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for not giving fair practicing hiring practices in his efforts to kind of build his administration in the city. Certainly more to come on that. We have not seen any kind of charges, but this comes as the Trump administration and the Justice Department have made it clear to states that they will go after them, and localities. Chicago and Johnson are already being sued for not cooperating with immigration actions. Now there's a potential investigation over hiring practices.
And we were just looking at a graphic of the racial makeup of Chicago, with Black Americans being the largest demographic there, among many. Jake Rosen, with all the updates for us, thank you very much. New witnesses are taking the stand today in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial. Yesterday, former Danity Kane singer Dawn Richard testified that she saw Combs assault his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura multiple times. Combs has pleaded not guilty. CBS News' Katrina Kaufman is at the federal courthouse in Manhattan and brings us the latest.
Yeah, that's right. We've been hearing from witnesses who have testified about the pattern of abuse and control with Sean Combs, both in his relationship with Cassie Ventura, his ex-girlfriend of over a decade, and in his company. People have been testifying about the abuse that they witnessed between Sean Combs and Ventura. That includes Dawn Richard, a singer who was in 2 groups that were signed to Bad Boy Records. She spent a lot of time around Ventura and Combs and witnessed him abusing her on a number of occasions. We've also heard from Ventura's best friend during that time period, Carrie Morgan. They were best friends for 17 years. She told harrowing stories of seeing Combs abuse Ventura, one where he dragged her down a hallway in Jamaica and they ended up hiding from him for what she said felt like hours. We've also heard from a former personal assistant to Sean Combs. That's David James. He talked about how when he was on the job, he had to show up about half an hour before Combs woke up in the morning, get everything arranged for him, worked for him throughout the day until he got a call time for the next day, and that often could be a 20-hour workday. He also said something that seemed significant from during his interview process, where he was told by somebody that this is Mr. Combs' kingdom, and we're all here to serve in it. Back to you.
Katrina, thank you very much. Tornado-ravaged states are Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to aid in their recovery. Now, the latest storms have killed dozens in Kentucky, Missouri, and Oklahoma in just the past few days. But along with the extreme weather, FEMA's been hit with extreme cutbacks. Let's chat with Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanger now, joining us to give us a bit more insight into all of this. Nicole, great to see you this morning. How is FEMA managing this onslaught of damage in so many places at the same time that their own funding is shrinking?
Errol, good to be with you. Look, on a good day, FEMA can handle multiple disasters at the same time, but the reality is that FEMA is not fully staffed up right now. So, since the president took office on January 20th, at least 2,000 individuals have left the nation's disaster relief agency, putting it at a 20% deficit right now. And there were warning signs. I mean, even before that happened, FEMA was operating with too few resources. Several former and current FEMA officials telling me they were strapped when hurricanes Milton and Helene hit back to back. The level of deployment to those federally declared disasters was unsustainable. If we have another year like we saw in 2017, where you had hurricanes Irma, Harvey, and then Maria, as one former FEMA official put it to me, we're in trouble. And so again, FEMA is designed to handle multiple disasters, at any given time. But, just last year, there was a federally declared disaster once every other day. But again, right now, the agency is not what it used to be in terms of staffing. And there's a lot of concern so close to hurricane season that, in fact, they won't be prepared. In fact, CBS News has obtained an internal review from FEMA indicating as much, that when the acting administrator was briefed just last week, he was told that FEMA's not ready for hurricane season.
And Nicole, you spoke about how frequent these disasters and emergency disasters were last year. Some states like Mississippi are still waiting for help from previous storms. Walthall County, for example, been waiting for a disaster declaration since March. Let's just listen to a sampling of that.
We don't have a declaration yet. People are still hurting. People no houses to go into.
We need federal help, and we need it desperately, and we need it now. And I know President Trump said that America first, we're going to help our American folks first, but we haven't seen the federal folks down here.
So those are some folks there in Mississippi. FEMA aid is frozen at the moment. So does the Trump administration have a plan to help these folks?
Yeah, Errol, Mississippi is in a bit of a disaster purgatory right now. Just to give you a sense of the timeline, there were nearly 20 tornadoes that ripped through the state back in March 14th and 15th. There were hundreds of houses destroyed during that time, at least 7 people killed as a result of that storm. The governor of Mississippi then applied on April 1st for federal funding for FEMA. We still have not seen that funding come through, even though in neighboring Arkansas, which saw the same series of tornadoes and storms, that federal funding did come through on May 13th. And so folks right now in the state of Mississippi have been, pausing their debris removal. They've not been able to go through with some of the, rebuilding in that state because they simply don't know whether the federal dollars will be there. Now, we should also point out, you mentioned some of the freezing of FEMA funds. The Disaster Relief Agency right now has a $5 billion deficit in its disaster relief fund. That request for Congress to sort of resupply that fund has not yet come through. We know that right now FEMA is considering sort of raising the threshold for when it gets involved in helping states to recover from natural or from these sort of federally declared disasters. But what we're seeing in Mississippi, if it's any indication of what's to come, states are not ready to do this alone in the way that FEMA 2.0 might force them to.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And meanwhile, people are delayed in getting their lives back to normal and in getting the help that they need. Nicole Scanga, great to chat with you with all the latest on this. We appreciate it. All right, we continue to watch a potential major storm system that's threatening millions of Americans. And you see the map right next to me, from the deep south to the Ohio Valley today. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at the national forecast. Hey there, Grant.
Hey, good morning, Errol. Look, you were just showing the map of the outlook of where we're expected to see some of the significant and large hail today. I want to talk about some of the hail reports yesterday just to give you some perspective about how big we're talking about. We're talking about very large to what they would categorize in the National Weather Service as giant hail. 4.5-inch diameter hail yesterday in Texas, St. Joe, Texas, to be specific. That's the size of a grapefruit, okay? I mean, we typically say baseball-size hail is big, and that is big. But when you talk about grapefruit-size hail, that is unbelievable. Blue Grove, Texas saw about 3-inch diameter hail as well, and even into Missouri, we saw 2.5-inch diameter hail. They're about the size of an egg. This was the area of the severe weather yesterday, right there through the heart of the country, through the plains into the Midwestern states and the Ozarks. A little severe weather into South Carolina as well. The focus for the severe weather today is going to be into the Tennessee Valley and a little farther north up into the Ohio Valley, as once again we're looking at the threat for tornadoes, potentially strong, long-track tornadoes, and probably some more large hail in some of these storms. Also to the north, you got heavy rainfall up into the Great Lakes states. That's going to produce a flash flood concern. That storm threat will move east. Now, not a severe threat tomorrow, but we're transitioning over to just steady and potentially flooding rainfall through the mid-Atlantic into the northeast as we go into Wednesday and Thursday as well. Meanwhile, we have a concern for some real big heat across portions of Southern California. 100-degree temperatures expected as we go into the day tomorrow, into Thursday. L.A. could see temperatures approaching 100 degrees. And it's not just Southern California. You'd expect it into Palm Springs and into Arizona as well. Temperatures there around triple digits for Wednesday, Thursday. Folks in Southern California, make sure you're staying hydrated for the next couple of days with this heat moving through. Errol, back to you.
Yes, very important advice. Get hydrated before you feel the thirst coming on. All right, Grant, thanks very much. We'll see you again very soon. Still ahead for you all, the incredible story of a firefighter who kept hopes and dreams alive by saving embryos after a fertility center in California was bombed. You're going to want to hear this. You're in the right place, streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. The United Nations says it's received permission from Israel for around 100 emergency aid trucks to enter Gaza. This as Israeli forces continue to launch strikes across the enclave, with at least 7 people killed over the last 24 hours alone. That's according to Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Potter brings us more now from Tel Aviv.
Very few trucks have been let into Gaza so far. This despite the fact that the World Food Programme says it has enough food on standby to feed the entire population of Gaza for a month. The United Nations says that while it is a welcome development to allow aid in, it is a drop in the ocean, given that global hunger experts are warning famine is looming following a nearly 3-month-long Israeli aid blockade. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to resume minimal aid came after pressure from allies, including the US, who are saying that they won't be able to support Israel's war if there are images of mass starvation from Gaza. And in a separate statement, the UK, Canada and France say denying aid runs the risk of violating international humanitarian law. Back to you.
All right, Deborah, thank you very much. All right, we want to share with you a standout story that we're seeing from California. When first responders in Palm Springs raced to the scene of an explosion outside a fertility clinic Saturday morning, they not only tried to save as many people as possible, but they also found themselves in a race to save the embryos inside. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Joy Benedict has more on this.
Right here, this whole building exploded.
The blast was felt for blocks as debris from a car bomb outside a fertility clinic in Palm Springs leveled this building.
It was insane. I thought it was a massive earthquake.
But for a time, it also crippled the hope of couples throughout this community.
My first reaction was like, my embryos are there. Like what's going to happen to my embryos?
Thankfully, it was a thought that also went through the mind of Deputy Fire Chief Greg Lyle, who was on the scene.
I tried to pitch it that, there were hopes and dreams in there, and the fire department volunteered to go try and help.
Within minutes of the blast, he and a member of the bomb squad entered the building looking for cryogenic material, frozen embryos, eggs, anything that could help local families conceive.
We said, if we don't try, the bad guy wins. I didn't know what I was looking for, neither did he. We didn't know what a cryogenic tank looked like or what it was, what we were going to find.
They realized upon entering the blast site that the freezers were too big to move, so they found a way to restore the power, keeping those dreams alive.
I received a text message later on that night from one of the personnel fire department thanking me for saving his embryos.
Investigators say the suspect in the blast, Guy Edward Bartkus, was killed in the explosion and that he had expressed an anti-pro-life stance. His father told us he used to make stink and smoke bombs as a child and even burned the house down once, but he says he never expected him to hurt anyone.
I would never like that before that. Guy was more for helping people.
Investigators spent Monday on the scene, still sorting through the debris, trying to figure out exactly what exploded.
Try to see if they can identify anything that can show how or what kind of device was used.
Because hearing the FBI say that this is the largest bomb they've seen detonate in Southern California, that's alarming.
So I've been here for almost 24 years. That has never happened in our city's history. This was felt about a mile away. We're still getting people calling in with fragments from the vehicle or debris on their roofs from their front yards.
The Palm Springs Police Department tells me that although this clinic is clearly closed, the doctor has been able to continue seeing patients at a different location, so no one's treatment was disrupted by this blast. Joy Benedict, CBS News, Palm Springs, California.
An incredible story, Joy. Thank you for that. We've got more of the day's biggest stories for you next. Stay with us. This is CBS News 24/7.